Okay, hi. I'm Michael Cayley. I'm the director for Startup Grind Toronto. Startup Grind Toronto and Startup Grind. Can you see me?
I
No.
cannot see you now. I see till the edge of the front row. Oh, perfect.
How's this?
That's perfect.
So I'm Michael Cayley. I'm the director of Startup Grind Toronto and the interim director of Startup Grind in Kitchener-Waterloo. Startup Grind started in Silicon Valley. 3 years ago, a guy named Derek Anderson started it. He had a startup, flamed out, health therapy, had a session like that with about 10 founders, then they decided to do it again. And being in the valley, they invited some knowledgeable people. I think that was their first guest. Then they expanded it to San Francisco and Marin. LA came on board. I was taking my company, which is called Seedling Capital Services. Seedling is is a platform for building trust between startups and experts, be they investors or advisors globally. I was taking that through the Canadian Tech Accelerator program, and I met Derek. I went to the Steve Blank session. Said, hey man, we should start to do this in Canada. So Toronto was about the 6th or 7th chapter globally. Right now we have chapters in Toronto, Ottawa, in Calgary, Vancouver, Montreal. And this event is part of a 3-event series where we've really tried to kick off a chapter in Kitchener-Waterloo in collaboration with Communitech, Sam, who's manager at the Joel program. You want to stand up, Sam, so Ariel can see you. And Medusha, who's been working closely with us as part of Startup Services as well. And then we've also been working with Velocity folks as well as part of this. We had George Bank Capital in September. We had Jim Scheinman, who was on the founding team of Bebo last month, and now we have Ariel Polar. I would also like to thank Wildeber Delise, which is a law firm that has offices here. It is a sponsor paying for the food and beverage, and your only price of admission for today is to at Wildlaw and with your phone at some point and say, hey, thanks for helping us make this happen. Here are a few other Twitter handles that you might want to be aware of. This is Ariel's Startup Grind. This is the Velocity one, and Communitech, and our company Seedling is CDLING at HQ. So at CDLING HQ. Sam, Medusa, any other blah 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 stuff that I get out of the way? All right. So my company does ratings, sort of like a cloud score for investors. About 2 years ago, we did an alpha test of these ratings on 22,000 investors across the California ecosystem. And the guest that we are speaking with today is number 16 out of 22,000 investors. Very experienced investor. He'll tell you a little bit about his experience during the late 90s and what evolved out of that. He's an investor in AngelList. How many people know what AngelList is? Okay. He's been an investor in SlideShare. He was on the chairman of the board of StumbleUpon, which is a Calgary-based company, and that's an interesting story in terms of how they worked through that. He was also an investor in Audio, which was the precursor to Twitter, and was part of that sort of investor group that worked through the whole Twitter experience, and so we'll talk a little bit about that today as well. But please join me in first welcoming Ariel. Where are you sitting? Where are you sitting right now, Ariel?
At my home's library.
Yeah. Okay. And so this is a secret location. This is Batcave in somewhere Palo Alto or around them there.
No, actually.
But a little bit, maybe let's, you know, can you help me with the parts of your introduction that I missed going, you know, starting in Venezuela, a little bit about going to school, and a little bit about, you know, how you got into your first startups? Because I think the story of you going to Silicon Valley is very interesting.
Sure. So real quick, I am originally from Venezuela. Came to the U.S. to go to college. I went to MIT, studied math and computer science. Worked at a few other places. Decided I wanted to do a startup, but you know, I was from Venezuela. Didn't have work permit or anything like that. Occurred to me that going to business school could be a good launch pad. I thought, let me go to business school in California and then work on a startup there. So I went to Stanford, and when I was there 92 to 94, working on a startup. And I was very fortunate because some of you might know that the web actually was invented in '93. So there I was trying to figure out what to do, and somebody shows me the World Wide Web, and it was like, wow, this is going to be great. I should do something here. So in '94, when I graduated, I started the first web analytics company. Again, we're talking at that time almost like pre-Netscape, when there were not too many companies. So I was, again, pretty fortunate, had pretty good timing, one of the first net companies, if you will. It was hard initially, and for those of you who might consider the visa situation and so on, I took advantage of practical training, which is a year that any student gets to work on anything he or she wants without having to worry about visa. So I did that and started my first company, iPro, became Nielsen iPro, and that did pretty well, and it was high profile again because it was so early, and that allowed me to meet lots of other young entrepreneurs in the mid-90s who were working on some of the early internet startups, and I really enjoyed the opportunity of helping them. So when I left my first company, which we sold, I spent a few years just focus on helping entrepreneurs. So Link Exchange is a company that I was the chairman of the board. We sold that to Microsoft. That's where Tony Se, who's now running Zappos, was running that, and Ali Pertovi, who's a very prominent investor these days, were there, and Kana Software, which was one of the first CRM companies for the internet. We took that company public. So I did that for a while. After that, I had an idea for using email for groups. This is pre-Yahoo Groups, pre-Google Groups. And I started a company called Topica in the late 90s. Ran that for a while, and you know, that grew quite a bit. After that, I had my third son. I have 3 boys, and decided that I wanted to slow down a bit. So I had someone else run Topica and stay just on the board. And since then, I've concluded that I enjoy helping others with their startups more than doing my own, and that I'm actually better at it. So mostly of what I've done for the past 15 years or so has been to try to find, every year I try to find a handful of new entrepreneurs that I think I can help, and spend time with them. I mean, it's angel investing, but it's a little bit different in the sense that it's not about putting money to work. It's more about spending time helping entrepreneurs. But the easiest way of aligning interests and formalizing their relationship is through an angel investment. So that's the way it works. So yeah, you mentioned some of the companies I've been involved with. I'm currently also on the board of Strava. For those of you who are cyclists or runners, you might be familiar with that. It's a fabulous company. You know, other companies that I've had the fortune of helping out: AdMob, Optimizely, Nextag, Flixster. And yeah, that's kind of like a short version. I'm in San Francisco, where I live, and
can you show me your hands right now? I just want to. You don't have a cast. You don't have like every time I've spoken to you, it's been like I'm talking to you just out as.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, no, you can. Can you see here? I still have a bit of.
So he's an avid kiteboarder, and so he has every other time I've been in a video conference with him, he has it looks like he's just emerged from a fight. But.
I don't know. I mean, I'm usually in the water, so when I usually hitting my board, so it's not that bad.
Okay, how many people have questions? Put up your hand if you have a question. If you don't have a question, I'm coming around. Okay? It's not time to ask a question yet, but next time I say who's got a question, I want to see at least 10 people go up or it's going to crash badly. Okay. couple of stories in, great stories. First of all, from that, it's interesting, so actually going to that MBA school, for Ariel, as opposed to, I think that's important in a town like Kitchener-Waterloo, where, the school is so much part of the ecosystem here. Okay, so there's two stories that kind of stick out for me. One is the work through of Twitter, but also the whole story, because Stumble Upon is a Calgary-based company, and so maybe we can relate to some of their early trials, and then what made them decide to go to the Valley, and then how that worked.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great story. They were based in Canada. I've been working on Stumble for a few years, so this, Stumble was anything but an overnight success. And there was a person in Silicon Valley, Brad O'Neill is his name, who was an avid user and who established a relationship with them and told them, guys, you should come to Silicon Valley. This is such a great company, take it to the next level. But he didn't know the startup system back then. He was just he was an analyst in the hardware space. So he asked a friend of his who was a venture capitalist, hey, I have this great company. Can you suggest some maybe angels or seed stage people to help them out? And I should mention, this is we're talking probably 2006 maybe, give or take. And one thing to keep in mind is that today it seems like there are hundreds of thousands of people who help startups. Like wherever you look, there's an incubator, an accelerator, an angel group, a platform. It was not like that 8 or 10 years ago. So when you say, well, who's like a hands-on early stage person, like in Silicon Valley, there were a few of us. So long story short, somebody said, well, why don't you talk to Ariel? So they reach out to me. I look at Stumble Upon. I said, wow, this is pretty cool. I'd love to meet the guys. They came to Silicon Valley. We met, and they were excited about taking the company to the next level, and agreed that 3 young guys moving to Silicon Valley made sense. And after spending a little bit of time with them, I offered to help them make the transition. So I became chairman of the company. And obviously, one of the first things we needed to do was to raise some money to fund the transition. That went extremely well because it was a combination of, I had the access to, well, I sat down with them and said, well, let's come up with a list of who we think are going to be the best investors, backers for you. And, we came up with a great list of people. And then they had a great team, great product, traction, a clear business model. So I reached out to half a dozen investors. We met with them the next week, and literally by the end of the week, it was done. Everybody had committed, and then the harder part came was the immigration and tax and accounting elements of moving the company from Canada to the U.S. So while the funding took place literally in a week, we raised I think it was a little over $1 million from like some of the best people in the Valley. It took us months to work through the legal issues and the immigration, particularly because one of the smartest, I think, of them had dropped out of college, so he didn't qualify for some of the NAFTA visa and so on. But we made it all work. They moved. And, they did really well here. We helped them round up the team, make good connections. When it was time to do the next financing, they had made a lot of progress. We were approached by a few potential acquirers. eBay made a really good offer. We had a few offers. eBay made the best offer. The team really liked it, and we sold the company to eBay. It was a really good story, I think.
And those guys have gone on to do Uber, right? Or one of them.
Yeah, Garrett Camp, who was one of the 3 founders of Stumble Upon and the CEO. Actually, he had the idea for Uber, and sort of like, I believe he's the chairman or something like that. He recruited someone else to run it. Eventually, Travis came in to run it.
Did you invest in Uber?
I did not, and I'll tell you, it's interesting. But so Garrett introduced me to the first CEO that that Uber had, and I didn't hit it off with him. This is Ray Travis, and for me, I thought, yeah, great idea. It's good to have Garrett involved, but for me, it's all about spending time with the management team, with the founders, and even if I think it's a great project, if I don't think I'm gonna hit it off, work well with the person, that's just not what I do. So unfortunately, and I wish I could say that that was the only one, but I have a good half a dozen similar companies where for similar reasons I'm like, yeah, I don't think this is necessarily gonna work out too well. Of course, then they bring Travis on board, who I really like, but by that point, it's like, okay, it's later, it's not the kind of thing that I do. So yeah, unfortunately, that's in my wall of shame.
So there are a few people in the world that have as much quality deal flow as you do. Can you tell us a little bit about, how these hot deals come together in the Valley? I mean, AngelList is a big part of it, but there's also, you're an investor in AngelList, but you were saying, that it comes to you different ways. So maybe a little bit about sort of how that deal flow happens and what is the reality of a deal coming together where you've got like just a stellar group of investors behind it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the majority, particularly the best deals, if you will, come from the network and the relationship that exists here in Silicon Valley. So the more there are a number of investors and entrepreneurs and other people that help the startup ecosystem, that we know each other, we like each other. So there's more than one group. And when one of us sees something promising, like I know in my case, if I see a project that I like, and then I think, okay, who else in my network I think would be interested in this, would be value added. It's not about just the group I send everything to. It's more about case by case. So in the same way, other people in the network, if they think that there's a great project that I could add value to, that I could be interested in, they will they will share that with me. So that's obviously one element. I mean, a broader network, if you will, and I think about me personally is, so I've met a large number of entrepreneurs, the majority of whom I have not invested in. That's just it's the math, right? You can only invest in a small fraction of the projects you see. So there's a really large number of entrepreneurs that I've met maybe once or twice, and then not work with them. But I always try during my interactions with entrepreneurs to be helpful, to treat them well, and even if I'm saying no, to try to, even in a small way, make an introduction, give them some feedback. So what I have found is that has turned over the years into a very large source of deals. So I will get very frequently someone who I met with and will invest in, who gets back to me and say, hey, Ariel, didn't work out in my case, but my friend, or my relative, or my classmate, or my second attempt, and will you take a look? And actually, some of the best projects that I've been involved with have come that way, but through the introduction of someone that I ended up not working with. And then, of course, the people that we do work with, many of them, particularly those, many of them succeed and then become investors themselves. They become advisors. So it's sort of like it's just one big network, if you will, or I should say, it's like a web of networks. A better way of putting it.
So is there anybody who, if you get the call from, that you would not say no to? Is there anybody that's like, okay, yes?
I don't think so. I mean,
what's this range of investments in terms of check size that you typically do?
So I don't write particularly large checks because I was saying before, for me, it's less about putting money to work, and I don't have a fund, it's just my own money. So the range, it's most of the investments I will do between $50,000 and $100,000. Sometimes I'll go as low as $25K, sometimes I'll go over $100K. So the typical thing is that a round is being done and they're raising anywhere between 500,000 and 2 million, give or take, and I'll participate with in the range that I described before. So I am never, almost never, the largest check, but sometimes even though I'm not writing the largest check, I might still lead the round. So take the example of StumbleUpon. I believe I invested maybe 100,000 in a round of 1.2. The largest check came from Ram Charan, who I think put 500,000. Mitch Kafer, I believe, put 250. There were a few other people who put in more money, but I was the one kind of like orchestrating that. And so there's not that direct relation between how much money you put in and how active you are. The other thing I should mention is that with a small portion of the projects that I'm involved with, in addition to being an investor, I might be maybe a board member, like the case of Stumble or Odeo or Strava. And in those cases, then I'll have a separate arrangement with the company where, for being a board member, I'll get some common equity vested over time.
So what do you think your biggest contributions to a startup are when you choose to get involved? I guess I haven't asked you this question before.
No, it's a new one. Look, I think the reality is that investors, we help on the market. I mean, the best investors are the investors who have the best results. I don't think are the ones that help the most. Are the ones that choose the best entrepreneurs to work with. So I think you have to be a little too full of yourself to pretend that as an investor you're the one who's really going to make or break the company. I don't think it works that way. So we accelerate things to make life easier for them. And sure, we more than once I've made an introduction that might lead to the acquisition of a company or a big financing. But do I think that without that the company was going to fail? I mean, no. I think that sooner or later some other good outcome was going to take place. So I just want to say that I think that investors help. We help only so much, but it varies a lot in terms of what I do. In many cases, what I try to be is like a sounding board and a confidant, if you will, to the entrepreneurs, somebody that they can open up to and share some of the challenges. And so I'm sure some in the audience are CEOs or running companies. It can be kind of lonely. You can't share everything with your team. You can't share everything with your board. Even though I'm an investor, I never have like an investor hat. I always very clearly convey to my entrepreneurs that I'm here to help you, to support you. So more than once, with more than one entrepreneurs, I have sometimes been kind of like a marriage counselor, if you will, where I'm helping them deal with issues. In terms of biggest impact, I would say when I help a startup find a great team member, that has always a huge impact. So it's huge when you help them find a key engineer or a key member of the management team, a key board member, a key investor, a key partner. Introductions play a big part for sure. And then I have a relatively broad set of experiences, ranging from from a technical background and working for very technical startups, to very business-oriented experiences. So it depends on the background of the team. Some of the teams are very technical. They make a change. We're just young computer science grads, or the guys from StumbleUpon, also very technical. So I tended to be more helping them more on the business side, maybe on the finances, partnership, marketing, if you will. But then some of the teams that I've helped, like Hana Software, Freedom Financial, where I'm on the board of, which is a wonderful company, they're non-technical. So in those cases, both cases, I was the acting CTO. I helped them recruit the original technical team. So it really varies. Some angels are very specific. I'm the growth guy, I'm the partners guy, I'm the finance guy. I can be more of like, well, I've been involved with dozens of startups that have gone from a few people, very small, to larger and bigger. Everything that entails is something I usually help out with.
Okay, who's got a question? How many people have questions? Put up your hand if you have a question. Okay, it's not time for questions yet, but everybody has to have their hand up.
You're warming them up really well.
I know, because we got to get, okay, so, but here's my last question. I think, so the themes of Startup Grind are to inspire, educate, and connect. So we're going to give you a chance to connect in a bit. From that, I hope overall you're going to learn a few things. But this, the story that Ariel has told a couple times now about sort of Twitter being the gem in the rough from a bigger story and working through that, I think is very inspirational for anybody that's working on a startup and they're sort of up against, like, I don't know if this is ever going to work out, a scenario. So maybe a little, so you invested in audio to begin with, right?
Yeah, I was on the board. It was a little different. Again, it was one of those situations where I thought podcasting was interesting. I saw that Evan Williams was working on a podcasting startup. So I reached out, offered to help, and actually he at the time wasn't raising money because he was funding it himself. Evan had sold Blogger to Google, but I joined the company as a board member, and it's a really interesting story on a number of fronts. One of which is that you can't believe anything you read in a blog or in a book or in a magazine about particularly this kind of how did Yahoo or Twitter or Google, what have you, or Facebook become about. I can tell you, having been involved with a number of those, that from the inside, what you read is very far from the truth. And if you look at, and the reason why I think it's important to be aware of this is that I often see entrepreneurs who try to emulate this, who try to say, well, this is what worked for Twitter, this is what worked for such company, I got to do the same. But it's fiction. It's not what really happened. So it can really hurt you. So, you take the case of Audio, was a podcasting company. Without getting into too many details, they just say it wasn't doing well, and we were struggling. And then Evan decided he didn't want to do it anymore. He was going to get married soon. He came to the board and said, I don't want to do this anymore. So around that, at the same time, because Audio wasn't doing well, he told his team, he used to work at Google where they have this 20% do whatever you want approach. So he told the team, do the same thing. Spend 20% of your time trying to come up with a new idea. And Jack Dorsey had come up with a precursor, if you will, I should say, because it was SMS only, it was a little different with Twitter. And among the several ideas that they were playing with, they decided to put some cycles behind Twitter. And so they had that as a little project, but even with that going, Evan just was fed up with the whole thing and didn't want to keep going. So we're like, well, what do we do? So the board asked me to go try to find a buyer for Audio, with or without Twitter. So we actually went around, we hired a boutique investment bank, and I remember approaching MySpace and saying, hey guys, this Twitter thing would be a really good thing for you because it kind of like might help you complete the basics. Well, nobody wanted Audio, with or without Twitter, at any price. I mean, we could not give it away. I mean, this is a fact. Now, Twitter at the time, by the way, it was spelled T-W, it was spelled like without the vowels, and it didn't have a lot of traction. It was a few months old. So we're like, okay, well, nobody's going to buy this. We have a CEO, founder who doesn't want to keep going. What should we do with this? And the lead investor was saying, just shut the whole thing down. And I was saying, I think there might be something there. So I don't think it's going to get down to it. But on the other hand, we can't keep going like this. Maybe we put it in the back burner, lower the burner. And then Evan came back and said, you know what? I've decided that I don't want this startup thing with the board and investors and co-founders. I want to do an incubator. So he came back to the board and the investors and said, I'm going to do an incubator. It's going to be called Obvious. Audio and Twitter are going to be two projects inside the incubator. And I want to keep the team. So I'm going to buy everyone out and start an incubator with these two projects. And that I can get excited about. So everybody's like, well, great. And by the way, this Twitter thing, who knows? It might be a big deal. We're encouraged by it, but it's still tiny. So everybody said, yeah, that sounds like a good plan. Go ahead, buy it. So Evan bought everything and everyone back. And a few months later, Twitter started to get a lot of traction and more traction. And eventually Twitter really took off. And then Evan decided that the incubator didn't make any sense because Twitter was a total rocket ship. So he shut that down or put it in hold and went to Twitter full time, which he wasn't doing initially. But I think one of the really interesting pieces there are a few things that I think are interesting takeaways. One is, it's not like it was a slam dunk to everyone involved from day one. And it's not like the original vision of Twitter was there on day one either. It's something that evolved and that it took off, and that quite candidly, in the early days, execution was not that great because it didn't have the focus, it didn't have the resources, and so on. But it hit a nerve in the world, and it took off, and we obviously now the rest was history. Yeah, I don't know if that's Michael, if that covers what you.
I think that's it. That's it. Yeah, I mean, I first got this angle on the story when I interviewed Ariel at our annual conference, which is coming up again. And one of the sort of magic things that happened for me was that, so Jim Scheinman, who was here, was an associate at Charles River Ventures at the time. So he had a different version or a different sort of take on the story. And then George Zachary was on stage, and he was telling the story as well. And so, I mean, just in terms of, if you ever thought of going to a conference, I'm plugging it a bit here, but like to get sort of 3 different views on this when you're standing in the hallway, it was a real treat. But okay. Now it's time for you to ask your question. Who's going first?
Okay. Hey, Michael.
Yes.
Now, let me just add one thing real quick, which is what you're hearing from me is my best recollection, but it's like the elephant. I am sure that it's not the whole story and that other people recall things differently. I'm not going to say, hey, it's absolutely exactly the way I'm saying it. So, yeah, you can't believe everything you say, even from speakers.
Yeah, and that's also been a consistent, like a bit contrarian in terms of the versioning of the story. Ariel has consistently related that as the only advice that he would give to an investor or to a founder is to be very cautious about the advice.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Hi, Ariel. My name is John. I'm with Clipter. We're a video sharing app. It's the easiest way to share your stories in real time in video. But I'm curious if you think we're in a tech bubble right now, and depending on your answer, what that means for entrepreneurs.
So what do you mean a tech bubble? I'm not sure. Before I answer your question, I want to understand what you're asking. How do you define a tech bubble?
Well, I'm interested in how you would define that as well. But do you think that valuations are is it looking like 2000, 2001 right now? Are burn rates too high? Are valuations too high? Is winter coming?
So yeah, I think I was fortunate or unfortunate, I don't know how to call it, to have been going through the first bubble. I think actually it wasn't really the first one. For me, it was even the second. So when it came, it was not that big of a deal, although it was the biggest. So the first thing I would say is that even after the first bubble burst, there were plenty of good companies that survived or that were started after the bubble burst and that did pretty well, Google being one of them. So the first thing I would say is that when I think about what to do, what projects to get involved with, who to work with, and I think I would encourage others to do the same, I am not as concerned about the macro level. And I am more concerned about, is this a great project? Does it make a lot of sense? Do I like it, et cetera, et cetera. It's a little bit like, if you think about public investing, you can go and say, well, I think the S&P 500 is going to keep going up, so I'm going to buy the S&P 500. And if it goes down, you're in big trouble. But if, on the other hand, you buy a company that you know what their cash flow projections are, you know they're profitable, You know they have a solid market that's not going to be that affected, and you buy in for the long term. Yeah, maybe it goes down if the market goes down, but the reality is that in the long term, if it's a solid business, you should still do okay. So, do I think that now there's a really large amount of money going after early stage, and that there are a number of projects being funded that are going to fail? Yes, I mean I think that's more the case now than it was 5 years ago. Is it going to be such a big implosion like during the 2000 bubble burst and the way it affected the public market? I mean, I don't know. I'm not an expert. I don't think it's as bad for a number of reasons. But again, on the valuation front, yes, our early stage, our valuation is higher than justifiably so. Yeah, maybe. But again, if you go in at a company that should be worth 5 or 10 million, and you have to pay 20. If the company does really well, it doesn't matter. I mean, does it matter the fact that the previous seed round was priced at 25 million and people thought it was obscene? If they go to be worth billions, doesn't matter. And if they fail, it doesn't matter either. So for some people who are trying to buy and sell and maybe do more of like a, well, I'm going to buy and hoping for a 3x, somebody takes them over, then it starts to be a different thing. But at least for me, and for those who just want to involve with successful company, yeah, it's not that big of a deal. I think I just you want to look at any given company and make sure that it's being well run, that they have enough runway, that they're not going crazy. I mean, the kind of stuff you see during the bubble where people were just spending like nuts with the plan that, don't worry, 6 months from now we'll do another round, and then when they couldn't raise that round, then they went under. That was the problem. So I won't invest in that kind of approach now. I wouldn't have it.
Oh.
Okay, he got disconnected.
Yeah, it's not us. Will you have to re-invite him, or I would stop broadcast, I guess.